Good evening and welcome to News Review. Gibraltar's alert status remains high but unchanged after the arrest of 4 jihadist suspects across the strait in Ceuta last weekend.
Much of Western Europe, including Gibraltar, has heightened its state of security following the events in Paris. Increased preventative measures have been clearly visible locally over the last week, with Royal Gibraltar Police and Defence Police officers patrolling the streets fully armed. On Saturday afternoon, 4 men were arrested in Ceuta by Spanish police. The 2 pairs of brothers were reportedly part of a terrorist organization planning an attack on the Spanish mainland. According to the Spanish Interior Minister, Jorge Fernández Díaz, they were highly trained at military, physical and mental levels and were prepared to blow themselves up in an attack. GBC understands the RGP and MOD have kept a watchful eye on events, but that no change has been made to the current high state of alert. In response to GBC questions, the convent said it couldn't comment on this particular incident, but that the security status of Gibraltar is kept under constant review in line with international security issues.
The Imam at the Tariq ibn Zayed Mosque on Limor Road has reached out to the Moroccan and Muslim community locally, making it clear that terrorism is un-Islamic. Abdesamad El-Mogalfi said the community should stick to its principles and not be influenced by radical propaganda on social media or by what happened in Paris earlier this month, when 3 days of terror left 17 people dead. The Imam said Islam encourages integration with all types of people and faiths.
في الحقيقة كنوجه هذا النداء لكل المسلمين وكل المغاربة الذين يتواجدون في جبل طارق. أقول لهم حرفيا باش يلتزموا بالأخلاقيات ديالهم اللي هو أمرهم بهم الدين الحنيف. فهذه الأشياء اللي هي كتوقع الآن في العالم أو خصوصا في فرنسا نحاول ما أمكن ما تأثرش في أخلاقيات ديالنا وما تأثرش في المعاملة ديالنا مع غيرنا. فالدين ديالنا كيوصينا باش نتعاملوا مع جميع الديانات. الله خلقنا من أب واحد، فلهذا خصنا نحافظوا على هذا التجمع أو على هذه المعاملة مع بعضنا البعض. أبونا واحد، ديننا واحد، كلنا ولله الحمد من بشر. فنحافظوا على هذه الانسجامية لأن جبلطار مثل أعلى لكل بقاع العالم. وجزاكم الله عنا خيرا.
Speaking to GBC's Viewpoint programme, Mr. El-Mogalfi said Gibraltar is a great example to the world and we should keep it that way. And also speaking on last night's Viewpoint on the topic of increased security, the Commissioner of Police confirmed that the RGP Special Branch had investigated a bomb threat at NatWest Bank earlier this month. Eddie Yomi told GBC that the police investigation established that a note threatening to blow up the building had been written by a 9-year-old girl.
Well, this was a 9-year-old with her parent. Her parent was waiting in line to, to be seen to by the bank staff. And this little girl decided to write some words which she posted into the NatWest letterbox, which then raised alarm. And that's all it was. But obviously, Special Branch dealt with it. We've spoken to the parents, we've spoken to the girl, and there's not much more to report. Just silly things by a little girl.
Mr. Yomi said he expects to meet with the Governor, the Chief Minister and the Commander British Forces Gibraltar next week to review the ROC's heightened security status. Number 6 has confirmed that the Chief Minister will be delivering an address to an audience of Spanish politicians, journalists and industrialists in Madrid. Fabian Picardo was originally going to address the Nueva Economía Forum, but the invitation was withdrawn for what the forum called reasons of state. Jonathan Sacramento spoke to the Chief Minister and asked him what he thought of this intervention.
Well, as you can imagine, Jonathan, hugely disappointing above everything else. Gibraltar presents a position which is not in any way disrespectful to the rest of the international community. It's a defense of our position in international law and an expression of our desire to work with our neighbours in a way that creates prosperity for the whole of our region of influence. Why anybody would want to prevent that message from being expressed is really quite difficult for me to understand.
Is it disappointing as well with respect to this forum, which has always been touted as an independent organisation and not pertaining to any political party?
Yes, I don't blame Nueva Economia Forum. I have seen the type of pressure to which it has been subjected, and frankly, given the circumstances, my view is that we shouldn't be looking at what Nueva Economia Forum have done. We should be asking ourselves whether anybody should have asked them to do it, and I think I'd leave it at that.
This has blown up in Mr. Margallo's face, hasn't it, given all the negative media attention it has received in Spain and elsewhere?
All of that which Mr. Margallo has done in the past 3 years and 4 months, I think, has been counterproductive entirely to the process of people being able to get on together across this frontier, to the creation of prosperity for mutual benefit across the frontier, and in my view, even for the understanding of Spain's case. I think the way that Mr. Margallo has expressed Spain's case for the takeover of Gibraltar has been the most anathema to the modern political world that there could have been. I mean, I don't think that there is anybody in Spain who can express the desire to take over the sovereignty of Gibraltar contrary to the interests of the people of Gibraltar in a way that might sound reasonable. But there are some at least who say, look, Gibraltar is an object of desire for Spain, but we recognize that 300 years have gone past since sovereignty was handed over, and there's now a population there, and we need to take into consideration what they think and their interests, and maybe some people might even go as far as saying their wishes. Would that everybody would say that. But the way that Mr. Margallo has gone about prosecuting Spain's case for the takeover of Gibraltar is, I think, the most unattractive that we could have seen. And of course that's very positive for Gibraltar, because it makes Gibraltar's position, which is simply to say that in a modern world the principle of consent must be what leads the determination of who a territory belongs to, is so easy and so attractive for the rest of the world to understand that we had to actually thank Mr. Margallo for every one of his statements and the way that he has expressed them.
Instances of mismanagement, misconduct and malpractice at the Dr. Giraldi home were infrequent and at the lower end of the scale for such behaviour. This, the Chief Minister says, is the conclusion of the report on the Dr. Giraldi home inquiry, delivered to government and set to be made public next week.
The Chief Minister said he notes the report's findings with satisfaction, adding that his government was most concerned with the issue of mismanagement and malpractice at the home. Fabian Picardo also said he noted the report's conclusion that the Dr. Giraldi home staff have done and are doing sterling work, even in difficult and challenging circumstances. The inquiry looked into various allegations of malpractice and the response from authorities and agencies, as well as other issues pertaining to the home. Over 60,000 pages of documents were examined, with live evidence also given by 63 witnesses. The Chief Minister thanked the inquiry's chairman, Sir Jonathan Parker, for what he described as an exhaustive and comprehensive report, also thanking the legal team that supported him, as well as those who gave evidence and their legal advisors. The report is now set to be studied by the government in depth and will be made public next Friday afternoon at 3 on both the inquiries and the government's websites.
A juvenile who wounded a man with a sword has been given a suspended prison sentence. The victim required stitches to a laceration on his ear after the 17-year-old swung a sword at him.
The incident took place on a summer's afternoon at Roger Bay last August. Prosecution lawyer Carl Ramaja told the court that following a confrontation, the juvenile took a sword out of the top box of his motorbike, removed a sheath from it and waved it menacingly in the complainant's direction. The 17-year-old swung the sword at the victim's neck and struck his left ear, causing a laceration that later required stitches. A friend intervened and threw the sword to the ground to prevent any further violence. The victim was taken to hospital and the juvenile was later arrested and charged with malicious wounding and possession of a sword and a BB gun, and he spent nearly a month in custody. The defendant's lawyer, David Dumas QC, asked the magistrate for a final act of mercy and to give the juvenile an opportunity to correct his ways. Mr. Dumas explained that his client is taking steps to make something of his future by furthering his education. Stipendiary Magistrate Charles Bito granted the 17-year-old a 4-month suspended sentence, and therefore he won't go to prison unless he reoffends in the next 12 months.
A local woman has been arrested on suspicion of cruelty to her 2 children. The woman, who's in her late 20s, remains on police bail whilst investigations continue. The children, both under the age of 10, have been placed into care. A jury delivered a guilty verdict to John Paul Pereira for possession with intent to supply cannabis at the Supreme Court. Pereira was on trial for intent to supply 97 grams of cannabis. He faced 3 charges and admitted to the possession of 98 grams of cannabis and less than 1 gram of amphetamine sulfate. He had pleaded not guilty for the intent to supply. His lawyer, Ian Watts, said Pereira has a terrible problem and has been an abuser of cannabis since he was 13, saying he smokes between 20 to 30 reefers a day. A jury of 9 gave a majority guilty verdict. Pereira will be sentenced at the Supreme Court on the 23rd of February. The Royal Gibraltar Police is warning of a spate of motorbike thefts across Gibraltar. Since December, 5 bikes have been stolen, with the police saying it's conducting an ongoing investigation to find those involved. The thefts appear to be well organised, with public parking areas as well as underground parkings and housing estates targeted. The police is asking people to report any suspicious activity. Davina Barbada asked Detective Inspector Roy Bettis why he felt we are seeing an increase in this behaviour.
One cannot actually say it. We think it's an opportunistic person going around and targeting certain bikes in particular. We have seen that a particular bike, the Yamaha Cygnus, for some reason or other, have been targeted more than any other bikes. We think this is the reason being that if you open the front hatch, one can have access to all sorts of electrics, which could possibly mean the easy target for them.
And what kind of culture exists locally with regards to people's approach to securing their vehicles?
I would say Gibraltarians are very relaxed in this nature, and I, for one, would say that I have a padlock in my bike and never occasionally use it, and we should be cautious that we should, especially now over the recent spike of increase that we've had on the theft of bikes. For if you have them installed, it only take a couple of seconds to install them, and it will be mean not coming back to your bike if you otherwise omit from doing so.
And what other advice is being issued?
The RGP's advice is if you parking on the street, make sure that you park where it's well lit. Take advantage of the public CCTV cameras installed. If you are parking your bikes in a garage, invest in a proper ground anchor where you can actually attach the device to the bike and to the ground. And anything that would make it far difficult for the thief to take advantage of it.
You asked the community to be vigilant, so should people challenge any suspicious behaviour?
Definitely. Many people think that someone might be touching a bike for some other reason, and behold, they are attempting to go tampering with the bike. Luckily enough, last week we had a passerby who witnessed somebody alighting from a car and tampering with a bike, which alerted the police, and thankfully we averted that bike from going over to Spain. So yes, if you see any suspicious movement, no matter how silly it may look like, just call 200 72500, ask for the duty inspector, and we make sure that we tackle it. And again, as you rightly so, if you see that we could take that slightly longer, challenge them. That could put people off and they'll move away from the area.
We'll be back with more of this week's news after the break.